All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Fantasy Sports Boss Bracketology special. Absolutely pumped up to be here with you guys tonight. It's going to be a long stream, a long show, so make sure you guys are ready to go. Have all your pens and paper handy because there's going to be a lot of information I'm going to be throwing at you guys over the next hour or two. So. Lots of systems, lots of trends, lots of statistics that are going to help you construct the best Final Four, the best bracket, and give you the best chance to pick the winner for this year's NCAA tournament, which looks to be as wide open as it's been in a very long time. No pure dominant number one team, no obvious pick for this season. That's going to make it an even better viewing experience for everybody. And I've always said that the NCAA tournament, even though this is primarily a fantasy football show, and I love football, greatly, I think the NCAA tournament is the best sporting event there is, hands down, no doubt about it. So a little background on me first. So using this system that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight, this has been all of these trends, these factors, all of these strategies that I'm going to share with you tonight. These are all methods that have allowed me to pick the winner of the NCAA tournament 3 of the last 4 years. All right. So, and it was really 4 years ago when I started using these trends that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight. So 2018 had it stone cold Villanova, Michigan in the finals, and I got the Villanova pick correct. 2019, I picked Virginia to win it all. I got that correct. Baylor, 2021, I did not get that one correct. So this is no, magic. I get everything correct. No, sometimes the system doesn't come through, and for the Baylor year, it didn't. But last season, I rebounded. Successfully picked 3 of the Final Four teams last year. The only one I didn't get was North Carolina, and then I had Kansas winning it all. So 3 of the last 4 years, I picked the national champion using the strategy, using the system that I'm going to use tonight. So 3 parts of this. One is we're going to discuss all the trends and strategies to help you pick the national champion. Then I'm going to go into the strategies and methods to pick the Final Four. And then I'm going to look at methods and strategies to help you identify upsets and pick upsets based on this season's bracket. So a lot to get to. Like I said, make sure you have your pen and paper handy. You can always come back and watch this video when we're all done because I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you, a lot of stats at you over the next couple of hours. So it might be a little bit overwhelming for sure. But before I get into all that, as far as the bracket is concerned, I think it was well done by the committee. I thought Rutgers should have gotten in over Mississippi State. That was the one quibble I had in terms of who got in, who did not. But I was pretty happy with the way the rest of it came out. So looking at all the regions, I think the toughest region to me is the East. I think Purdue was not done any favors by the committee. I mean, you have massive heavy hitters in this bracket with Duke and with Michigan State, and then Marquette, who's coming off a Big East championship, and a Memphis team, which I think is a tremendous team on the number 8 line, and they're actually playing another tremendous team in Florida Atlantic. That's going to be a great first round match. You have Kansas State from the Big 12, which was by far the best conference in college basketball this season. So there's a lot in Kentucky. I didn't even mention Kentucky, which is a 6 seed. Lots of pressure on John Calipari this season, but let me tell you that this is a tough bracket for Purdue, and I'm not a fan of Purdue, and I have never been a fan of Purdue. The issue I have with Purdue is every year they have a team with a lofty record, a glowing record, and then they wind up, disappointing in the tournaments. And that's why I'm not big on the Purdue bandwagon this season. As far as the rest of it, Midwest, Houston, I think that's a good, decent bracket. They're going to have to, Texas is going to be a factor there. The Kansas bracket, that's a loaded bracket there with UCLA, Gonzaga as a 3. TCU is a good team. So that's a really, and UConn is a 4. That is a really loaded bracket, talking about the West. So these teams are going to have their work cut out for them, in terms of the top seeds making the NCAA championship. Now, to me, a big part of successfully picking a bracket, the NCAA bracket, is the coaching. Over the years, there's been some coaches that have stood out with their knack for winning tournament games. And then there's those coaches who have a knack for coming out and laying an egg in the tournament and, having their teams bounced early. So, one of the best at always winning the first round was the late Rick Majerus, of St. Louis and Utah. He was always one that always seemed to win his first round matchup. Of course, Tom Izzo, that he's obviously, you all know who Tom Izzo is. He's always been a tremendous first round coach. On the opposite side of the equation there, Rick Barnes perennially goes out early in the tournament. Matt Painter has not had good luck in the tournament either. Jamie Dixon of TCU. These are all coaches that are hard to trust. And Shaka Smart, I know he had the one VCU team, but has struggled since. Danny Hurley in Connecticut. These are all coaches that I'm very leery of when it comes to March Madness. So that's another factor that I think it's we need to look at, and we need to really zero in on as well in terms of the teams that I think have a good shot, of getting to the tournament. Now, of course, we have the first four, and I don't really love the first four. I guess what the first four does is it really kind of just gets you to the tournament. Let's face it. So Tuesday night we're going to have games. Wednesday night we're going to have games. The 16 seed games, nobody cares about, the 11 seed games later on. At least you have some teams from major conferences that are going to be in those matchups. So that's something that I think will at least percolate some interest in the viewing community. But then Thursday, all the fun begins. And I believe the first matchup on Thursday is the 8-9 game. Which one was that? I don't have all the times in front of me. If I saw it, Thursday, Missouri, Utah State, that's at 140. Oh, there it is. So Maryland, West Virginia. That's a tremendous first matchup. Talking about Maryland and West Virginia. So, if right out of the gate, the TV partners, they always give you a close game to start off. And that Maryland, West Virginia game is going to be a real barn burner, a real tough one in order, to kick the tournament off there. So, all right. So again, going to get into all the systems and strategies now. Like I said, these strategies have helped me greatly, coming up with the Final Four, picking upsets, and then ultimately picking the national champion, because you gotta hit the national championship winner to win your pool. If you don't hit the national champion winner, you're not going to win. So, in terms of looking at it, I know it seems wide open this year, but I only think there's a handful of teams that could really win it all. Now, right at the top of the list to me, it's Alabama and Houston. A fully healthy Houston, that's another big theme in this tournament. There's a lot of injuries to a lot of big name players on big name programs, such as Houston with Marcus Sasser injured his groin in the semifinals of the conference tournament, and he's expected to play in the first round of the tournament. I don't even think they really even need him, for the first round to take on Northern Kentucky. But I think Houston is a tremendous team, and they could win it all. So I have, Alabama, Houston. I think Kansas definitely could win it all. UCLA, a fully healthy UCLA absolutely would have been on that list, but they've been dealing with injuries as well. I don't think Purdue can win it all. Gonzaga, I have my reservations about Gonzaga. I know there's a lot of Gonzaga backers now in terms of, okay, they're a little bit off the radar this year. They have the best offense in the country. All true. You have Mark Few as coach, but I don't think Gonzaga is capable of winning it all. I think Texas is a dark horse for sure. Arizona has a shot, but that's as far as I'm going to go with that. So I think it's just a limited number of teams that could win the entire tournament this season. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. So what I wanted to start off with today, now, the first bunch of strategies, I wanted to talk about picking upsets. All right. So a big key to winning your office pool is obviously you want to pick some correct upsets. And every year you have a double digit seed that makes the Sweet 16, but you got to be careful with the upsets. You don't want to pick too many, because then you're going to shortchange yourself in points, and you're going to fall behind early. And then maybe the teams that you should have put in the semifinals, but instead you had them picked off, by a double digit seed, that didn't happen. Then you're going to have trouble making up the points. So, I think that there's some wisdom in picking upsets, but not, going all the way, just because you got to be careful not leaving too many points on the board. So the first one that I wanted to talk about. So over the last 9 tournaments, all right. So over the last 9 NCAA tournaments, teams that were in the Ken Pomeroy top 34, top 35 overall rankings had gotten an 11 seed or worse. So last 9 tournaments, Ken Pomeroy, who we all know is a statistical genius, very addictive website that crunches numbers for all the teams. Over the last 9 tournaments, Ken Pom had teams that had top 35 overall ranking on Ken Pom got an 11 seed or worse. All right. So they were 11 seed or worse, despite being in the top 35 of Ken Pom's overall rankings. These teams are 23-16 straight up, including the first 4, 19-16 without the first 4. So, that's a pretty live stat right there for an 11 seed. So if you find an 11 seed, that is ranked within the top 35 of Ken Pomeroy, you got to pay a little bit more attention to that team. So that's a good stat, 19-16 without the first 4 in the first round. All right, here's another one. Over the last 8 tournaments, all right, there have been 43 teams seeded 11 or worse, okay, in round 1. Only 16 were outside the Ken Pom top 60. All right. So only 16 over the last 8 tournaments were seeded 11 or worse and were outside top 60 overall. So, you have to really zone in again on these teams that are double digit, underdogs or what have you, and start paying attention to them if they're highly rated. If they're not highly rated in Ken Pom, then you can just look past them and move on. And here's a good one. Ready? Mid-majors with a top 5 seed from 2012 to the present. 6 of 14 of these teams got upset in round 1. All right. So mid-majors top 5 seed from 2012 onward, 6 of those 14 teams got upset in round 1. All right. That's St. Mary's this year. So St. Mary's, they're I believe a 5 seed. They have to be careful. Let me just see. I'm looking at my bracket here. So they're playing VCU. All right. So VCU, St. Mary's out of the West region. That's one that you got to look at. They have a mid-major team in St. Mary's playing a very capable VCU team who did a terrific job in their conference tournament and looked really impressive as well. Sorry about that, guys. I'm just trying to get all my papers in order here. Don't have the best office setup here, but so St. Mary's is somebody that I think is extremely vulnerable. And personally, I'm picking VCU. I think VCU is going to upset St. Mary's. I don't think there's any. It wouldn't be a shock to me given how good VCU has played of late. So I'm definitely in on VCU to upset St. Mary's for that stat. So mid-majors top 5 seed from 2012 to present time. 14 of those teams, 6 of them were upset in round 1. So that's a good stat. 6 out of 14 mid-majors were upset in round 1 as with a top 5 seed. St. Mary's against VCU. I'm picking VCU. I'm telling you right now, I really like this VCU team. I think St. Mary's is going to go down in the first round this season. All right. So getting back to Ken Pomeroy, this is a good one too. 57 teams that were seeded 11 or worse. Only 6 of 57 teams, that were seeded 11 or worse pulled an upset in round one that were ranked outside Ken Pom's top 100. All right. So only 6 of 57 teams that were outside of Ken Pom's top 100 and seeded 11 or worse wound up pulling the upset in round 1. So, that's another stat that you really got to look at there in terms of, teams that probably don't have a good chance to spring that upset that Ken Pomeroy has outside. So basically anybody that Ken Pomeroy has outside the top 100, you really got to be careful not picking them to pull the upset in round 1. All right. So that's a big one there as well. All right. So here's another thing. All right. Since 2001, all right, there have been 7 teams that are seeded 1 or 2 who were upset in round 1. Okay. The 2s were Ohio State, 2021, Michigan State in 2016, Georgetown, 2013, Duke, 2012, Missouri, 2012, Kentucky, 2022. All right, obviously St. Peter's. Number 1 was Virginia 2018, UMBC. 4 of these teams were ranked 79th or worse in either adjusted offense or adjusted defense, according to KenPom. All right, so again, teams that are seeded 1 and 2, you got to be careful of those teams as well. All right, so that's something that you have to pay attention to as well. All right, let me see here. First tournament appearance. All right, so here's another one. First teams that make their first appearance in the tournament. Out of the last 98 teams to make their debut in the tournament, only 6 won. So 98 teams, the last 98 teams to make their debut in the tournament, only 6 won a game. All right. So this for this year, that's going to be Kennesaw State. They're the only one that's making their debut. So right off the bat, you're not gonna pick them to upset Xavier. So that you could cross that off the list right now. So 98 teams making their debut, only 6 won a game. So Kennesaw State against Xavier, you can safely put Xavier in to the next round. So we're not even going to look at that one there. All right, let's see. Let's try to find some good ones that relate to this this particular tournament. All right, so since 1985, 50 teams have received an at-large bid despite having a losing conference record. All right, so going back to 1985. All right, so 50 teams have gotten a at-large bid despite having a losing conference record. All right. Only out of those teams, only 7 of those 50 made it to the Sweet 16. So they could win a first round game, but they're not going to advance to the Sweet 16. Looking at you, Arkansas. All right. So Arkansas had a losing record in their conference. So, if you're looking at Arkansas, and this has been a solid team over the last couple of years. They play Illinois in round 1. They certainly could beat Illinois, but then they're going to get Kansas in round 2. Based on this trend, you're not going to take Arkansas to advance. All right. You're just not going to do it. So again, this is a good one. That's why I'm going to repeat it. 50 teams have gotten an at-large bid since 1985, despite a losing conference record. All right. Only 7 of those 50 made it to the Sweet 16. Looking at West Virginia, they're playing Maryland. They had a losing record in conference, all right, in the Big 12. So they're going to take on Alabama in round 2 if they knock off Maryland. So don't put West Virginia in the Sweet 16, all right? Missouri, who I think Missouri was completely overseeded. Let me find Missouri. I'm on the bracket here. Missouri. They were a 7 seed. They are playing Utah State, and I really like this Utah State team. So if Missouri beats Utah State, they're not going to beat Arizona according to this trend. So those who are just jumping on, the last 50 teams that got an at-large bid with losing conference records, only 6 of those 50 made it to the Sweet 16. So eliminate West Virginia, eliminate Arkansas, and eliminate Missouri, 3 teams that you're not going to put into the Sweet 16 based on this trend. So, and I do like West Virginia. I do like Arkansas. I do not like Missouri. I think Missouri was overseeded. I think Utah State's going to knock out Missouri in the first round. This is a Utah State team that's even ranked higher than Missouri, according to Ken Pomeroy. So, those 3 teams I just gave you, not putting them through to the Sweet 16. And so we're taking this bracket apart inch by inch, little by little. And it all helps. It helps cut through the muck so we can make the harder decisions later on. So those 3 teams you're not putting into the Sweet 16. So when you're also looking for upsets, you have to look for a team that's either, according to Ken Pomeroy, top 30 in adjusted offense or top 30 in adjusted defense, or they have to be in the top 45 in both. All right. So those are good metrics as well to spotting some upsets. But the biggest one to me is the losing conference record. So like, West Virginia, Missouri, Arkansas, you could safely eliminate all 3 of those teams from being in the Sweet 16 based on this metric. All right. Now, with that said, I want to get into the Final Four aspect of this. All right, picking the Final Four, and this is where, other than picking the national champion, of course, because you have to pick the national champion to win your pool. This is where pools are won or lost. All right, in the Final Four, and for me, when I first started doing all this yesterday. the South, the Midwest, and the West all have teams based on my system that make it, relatively easy call if I trust these systems that have helped me be in the top percentile of the ESPN pool 2 of the last 3 years and helped me pick the winner 3 of the last 4 years. But the East is a bracket that just completely sucks. That's a chaotic bracket. Teams that I just can't stand historically, like Marquette and Purdue and Tennessee, teams that all 3 of these teams tend to go out early and have coaches that tend to go out early in the tournament, are all bunched together in the East. So the East to me is the most challenging bracket for sure when it came to coming up who should make the Final Four. So now, as far as the systems, let me get to the systems now for the Final Four. All right. So the first one. So 7 out of the last 20 Final Four teams. All right, the last 20 Final Four teams to make it. 17 of the 20. That's a big number. 17 of the 20 were either the regular season or conference champion. So you have to prove your mettle during the long regular season, or you have to win the conference championship. If you do neither, you don't want to put them in the Final Four. 17 out of 20. So the teams that the prime teams, I'm not going to be talking about Charleston or Louisiana in this. The prime teams that have a good shot to make the Final Four that were either their conference champs, regular season champs, or won their conference tournament. Okay. Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Gonzaga, Texas, Arizona, Duke, UConn, neither one. So UConn, that's a red mark attached to their name in terms of putting them potentially in the Final Four. Baylor, they went out in the first round of their conference tournament. They did not win the regular season title either. This is a very flawed Baylor team. That's a knock on them and putting them in the Final Four. Marquette, they did it. Okay. They won the Big East tournament. All right. The rest of the teams I'm mentioning here now did not do it. Texas A&M, Arkansas, Creighton. Well, we're not putting Arkansas through anyway. We already talked about that. Creighton, Tennessee, St. Mary's, Xavier, Maryland. None of those teams won the conference regular season or won the conference tournament. And like I said, 17 of the last 20 Final Four teams either won the regular season or they won the conference tournament. So, to me, UConn, who some people will put in the Final Four because this team's been very good and they are rated metrically pretty high. That's a big negative for them. Texas A&M, nobody I don't think would put them really in the Final Four. But Tennessee, I know they're definitely coming in on a low note. Xavier, that's another one. Xavier team, maybe some people will think will come out of the West. Out of the Midwest. Might put them in the Final Four based on this metric. Nope, not happening. So again, make sure you write all this down. You could always come back and watch this video later. All these numbers, you really definitely want to chart all of this stuff. All right, now getting back to Ken Pomeroy. So, if it seems like I cite him a lot, it's just because it's been very accurate over the years. And I do use that as a major supplement for the rest of the systems that I have. Now this is Ken Pomeroy's overall ranking. All right, going into the tournament. Anything I talk about with Ken Pomeroy is pre-tournament. I don't, I know he changes the numbers during the tournament. I'm not interested in any of that. All right, it's all pre-tournament numbers. So since 2002, all right, we're talking 20 years of data. 70 of the 80 Final Four teams were ranked top 20 overall in this Ken Pom's rankings prior to the tournament. All right, so that's a big one. 70 out of 80 teams were in top 20 overall in Ken Pomeroy's rankings going into the tournament. All right, so as far as that's concerned, it's easier if I just give you the teams that aren't in the top 20. Duke, just outside the top 20. All right, so they did not make the cut. Texas A&M, not in the top 20. That's another demerit for Texas A&M to go with not winning the conference tournament or their regular season. And Maryland. So all three of those teams did not finish in the top 20 overall of Ken Pomeroy's metrics. All the other teams did. All right. So put a check mark against all those teams, but Duke, Maryland, and Texas A&M. And as far, so you can write this down before I get too further. The teams that I really looked at for the Final Four, and really having a realistic chance of making the Final Four: Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Gonzaga, Texas, Arizona, Duke. Those are the obvious ones. And I also included UConn, Baylor, Marquette, Texas A&M. I did put in Arkansas, but I shouldn't have because they're not going to the Final Four. Creighton, Tennessee, St. Mary's, Xavier, Maryland. I drew the line with those teams, all right, going forward. So if you need to write those down. All right, the next one. All right, this is good stuff, right, guys? All right, adjusted offense. Ken Pomeroy's adjusted offense. This is a big one, all right? So going back to 2002, 20 years of data, all right? 63 of the 80 Final Four teams were in the top 30 of adjusted offense. 63 teams made the cut, 17 did not. So that's a pretty big number. So adjusted offense, top 30. All of these teams, so to make it easy, I'll give you the teams that did not qualify. So if you wrote down all those teams I already told you to write down, I'll give you the teams that did not qualify. Those teams that did not finish top 30 in adjusted offense, Duke. So Duke, again, that's another negative. They didn't finish in the top 20 overall, and they did not finish in the top 30 in adjusted O. Arkansas, again, and I probably should stop talking about Arkansas because they're not going to finish in the top. They're not going to finish in the Final Four. Tennessee did not finish in the top 30 in adjusted offense. St. Mary's and Maryland. So those teams did not make the cut on the top 20 in adjusted. The top 30 in adjusted offense. All right. Adjusted defense. So adjusted defense is not. It's more or less offense is more of a predictor than defense in terms of teams getting to the Final Four. But since 2002, again, 20 years of data, 59 of 80 teams made the Final Four when they were in the top 30. All right. So top 30 adjusted O, top 30 adjusted D. That's the benchmark you want to reach for a Final Four team. Now, the teams that did not make the cut as top 30 adjusted defense, Gonzaga. Gonzaga does not grade out well in defense at all, which we're going to get to. Arizona didn't make it. Baylor didn't make it. Marquette didn't make it. Texas A&M didn't make it. Xavier and Maryland. All right. So those teams did not make it. So far for this point, Ken Pom overall top 20, top 30 adjusted O, top 30 adjusted D. Houston, the teams that qualify in all three so far: Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, Texas, and UConn. That's it. So already we're starting to whittle down teams. All right. And then, the regular season conference champs. When you add in the regular season conference champions, that eliminates UConn right there. So then we're just looking at Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, and Texas. That's it to this point. All right. So again, I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you guys. When we're done, just rewind it, go back, watch it all. This is all strategies that are going to help you. All right. So how about this one? Ready? So winning 24 games, that seems to be a benchmark. So teams that make the Final Four need to win 24 games. All right. Based on winning 24 games, 83% of the teams over the last 15 years have made the Final Four winning 24 games or more. All right. And this one, pretty straightforward. Most of the top teams win 24 games. Baylor did not. So you can eliminate Baylor there. And Baylor's already getting a lot of negatives attached to them in terms of a Final Four team. And I don't think Arkansas, they don't make the cut either. They did not win 24 games. Creighton did not win 24 games. And Tennessee did not win 24 games, nor did Maryland. All right. So those teams did not win 24 games. 83% of teams that made the Final Four won at least 24 games, including the conference tournaments. All right. So you got to use regular season and you have to use conference tournaments. All right. So far now we've gone through 4, 5 stats. And the teams that have qualified in all 5 are Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Purdue, and Texas. Just those 5 teams. That's it. So we're already starting to get a clear idea of who has the better shot of making the Final Four. All right. For those of you who bet, against the spread record has some relevancy in terms of picking Final Four teams. I'm not in love with this stat because teams like Duke are always going to get overbet, and it's going to leave them susceptible to finishing with negative records, below 500 records against the spread. But there are numbers to back this up, okay? Out of the last 52 teams to make the Final Four, 42 of them had a winning against the spread record. So that's not an insignificant total. 42 made it, 10 didn't with a winning against the spread record. So teams that had a winning against the spread record this season, including conference tournaments: Houston, Alabama, UCLA, UConn, Baylor, Marquette, Tennessee, St. Mary's, Xavier, and Maryland all had winning records against the spread. Teams I didn't mention did not. So 42 out of 52 now qualified for the last, among the last 52 teams to make the Final Four. 42 of the 52 had winning against the spread records. It's a good stat. But again, teams like Duke, are going to be a little susceptible to that. Although, and also Kansas. Kansas is a big name program. They did not have a winning against the spread record. So I'm not in love with this one. But just for craps and giggles, let's just keep going with it. And now, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 stats in. The only teams that have qualified for all 6 are Houston, Alabama, UCLA, and that's it. So just Houston, Alabama, and UCLA. So we're pretty telling so far. All right. So getting back to the extreme teams, we really gotta zone in on the extreme teams. All right. This is a big one. All right. This is a really, 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 really good stat. All right. Let me pull up KenPom. And if there's one, I do value some of the stats more than others. This is right near the top. Extreme teams that you have to be very leery of when it comes to picking Final Four teams. So this one you want to write down, okay? Get your pencils ready for this one. Since 2002, again, 20 years, 155 extreme teams went into the tournament, all right? Where they ranked inside the top 10 in either adjusted offense, according to KenPom, or adjusted defense, and we're outside the top 50 in the other. So top 10 offense, outside of the top 50 in defense. Top 10 defense, outside the top 50 in offense. All right? Out of these 155 teams, only 0.3% made the Final Four. If there is one stat you want to put right at the top of your list for Final Four teams, this is it. 4 out of 155 extreme teams made the Final Four. And we have some extreme teams this year and some big name ones, okay? Right at the top of the list, Gonzaga. Gonzaga is a very popular pick to come out of the West bracket as a 3 seed. They're very talented. They fill it up offensively. They shoot the hell out of the ball, both from the field. They lead all of college basketball in field goal percentage. They're also they've always been a good free throw and 3-point shooting team. Gonzaga, number 1 in adjusted offense. Wow. Tremendous stat, right? No doubt about it. They are legit putting the ball in the hoop. On defense, 76. That's a major extreme team. And so extreme teams over the course of 6 games in the tournament tend to fall prey to the tournament, but just running into 6 different teams during the course of the tournament. So this is a big one. All right. This is one you definitely want to have in bold letters on your cheat sheets there. So Gonzaga, I would not think about putting in the Final Four based on this stat and this stat alone. Other extreme teams to be aware of: Baylor, number 2 in offense, 104 in defense. I think Baylor's going to get picked off early in this tournament. I don't like Baylor. I don't like the way they finished the season. I know they got 3 guards who could light it up, no doubt. That's why they're number 2 in offense. But they're going to reach a game where they're going to play a tough defensive team looking at you, Creighton, and they're going to have problems. Their defense is horrible, talking about Baylor. So you cannot put Baylor in the Final Four. Xavier, another extreme team. They are 9th in adjusted offense, 70th in adjusted defense. That's terrible. Xavier, an absolute extreme team you want to be aware of. Iowa, not that you probably would have any idea putting Iowa in, but they're number 3 in offense, 167 in defense. No, thank you. You're not putting Iowa in. And then where was the other one? I believe it was Missouri. Missouri, 10 in adjusted offense, 178 in defense. So those 5 teams, Missouri, Iowa, Gonzaga, Baylor, Xavier, you're not putting in the Final Four. So from this point forward in this exercise, I'm not talking about Gonzaga anymore. I'm not talking about Baylor anymore. I'm not talking about Xavier anymore as far as these teams that on paper, and they're all number 3 seeds, which is ironic. I'm done talking about them because there's no point, okay? 4 out of 100 and what was the number? 150 something, 155 teams made the Final Four, being an extreme team. So you're not putting those teams into the Final Four. So we can cross them off right now. All right. We can absolutely cross them off right now. There is no need to have them involved. All right. So and that's the thing too. Like I said, Gonzaga is going to get a lot of attention. Just because they have the offensive weapons. They have the players, the personnel, they have the coach to get it done. But I think that this stat is just too good to ignore. All right, so but that is a tremendous one to use for sure. Extreme teams. So you have to eliminate those teams right off the bat. Gonzaga, Baylor, and Xavier. All right. Here's another really good one. All right. So this one also was right near the top for me. Beginning the season unranked. So the Associated Press puts out a preseason top 25. They do it every year. Gets a lot of attention. Did my team make the top 25? And what's interesting is the top 25, the number 1 team in the top 25 this past October was North Carolina, who didn't even make the tournament, which is just a complete disaster. After going to the Final Four a year ago, I'm basically bringing everybody back. But here, how about this number? 34 teams since 2002. There have been 34 teams who began the season unranked, but then got a top 2 seed for the NCAA tournament. Top 2 seed in their region. All right. So again, just to reiterate this, 34 teams since 2002 went into the season unranked from the Associated Press poll, but then were given a number 1 or 2 seed for the tournament. Out of those 34 teams, not a single one made the Final Four. Zilch. Not a single one. Last year, that was Arizona. Remember, Arizona was the number 2 seed last year. All right, excuse me. Arizona was a very popular number 2 seed last year. And they qualified. They were the 34th team. Unranked last year in the preseason. I believe they got a number 2 seed last year. And they got bounced before the final. They should have been bounced in the second round by TCU. Horrible officiating. But that's another team, and that was a big name team that a lot of people picked. They went down. They went down early. So for this season, ready? We got 2 big ones. Purdue. Purdue was unranked going into the season, and they're a number 1 seed in the East bracket. You can't pick Purdue to go to the Final Four. I've already told you guys multiple times. You cannot pick Purdue to go to the Final Four based on this alone, based on this stat alone, okay? I've always had issues with Matt Painter in the tournament. I think he gets nervous. I think he makes poor decisions. Purdue, right there with Tennessee, Rick Barnes, another coach who always flames out early in the tournament despite possessing really good teams. That's a problem for me. So I cannot pick Purdue, as talented as they are. And listen, they are tempting with Edney, the center there, player of the year. They are very, very tempting. There's no doubt about it. But I just can't do it. I cannot put them in the Final Four. And how about the other team? Ready? Marquette. Marquette began the season unranked, and now Marquette has gotten a number 2 seed in the same exact region as Purdue. All right? So, bam. You could safely, just like you eliminated Gonzaga and you eliminated Baylor and you eliminated Xavier, now you can eliminate Purdue and you can eliminate Marquette. Let me get my pen here so I can follow along with you guys on this. So we are eliminating Gonzaga, we're eliminating Baylor, eliminating Xavier. Now we're eliminating Purdue and Marquette. And that's why the East bracket is so troubling to me, because of the fact that they're both, you have 2 teams in Marquette and Purdue trying to buck a 34 out of 34 trend of teams who began the season unranked and then were given a top 2 seed for the tournament. All right. So you got to eliminate those teams right there. So let's do it. So Gonzaga, what did we say? We said Baylor, Marquette. We've already eliminated Arkansas because of the other stat I gave you about having a losing conference record. St. Mary's I've eliminated. I think St. Mary's is going to be knocked out in the first round. Xavier, Maryland is simply not good enough. Texas A&M, they got screwed with their seed, so they're not going. And who else? Oh, yeah, and Purdue. So right now, that leaves us with Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Texas, Arizona, Duke, UConn, and Creighton and Tennessee as Final Four teams. So we're working our way through this now. All right. We are definitely working our way through this in terms of eliminating more teams as we go on. All right. So that's another good one. Those last 2 I gave you are really must, must use stats, if you will. All right. 80% of the teams since 2002 were seeded 1 to 3. I'm not a huge fan. I mean, Duke and UConn and Creighton and Tennessee are not seeded 1 to 3. So, you could knock them if you want. That's fine if you did that. But I'm not really so much. That's just a very kind of a blanket. I know 80% is a lot of number, is a high number for sure. But I'm not really going to use that one as much as we probably, as much as some of the other numbers out there. All right. All right. Let's see. We go through another one. All right. All right. So getting back to the numbers here. So taking adjusted offense. So we already talked about being in the top 30 of the adjusted offense, right? Now, let's stretch that out to the top 50. The reason why, so as far as the top 30 of an adjusted offense, that's 55 out of 80 teams that made it, right? In terms of the Final Four. All right. 63 of 80. I apologize. 63 out of 80. So top 30 adjusted offense, 63 out of the 80 teams made the Final Four. If we stretch that out to the top 50, then that's 74 out of 80 teams. So KenPom adjusted offense. If they finished in the top 50, 74 of the last 80 teams qualified under that criteria. Using the teams that we still have left in our elimination for the Final Four, Houston qualified for that. Alabama qualified. Kansas qualified. UCLA qualified. Texas qualified. Arizona qualified. Duke qualified. UConn qualified. Creighton did. And so did Tennessee. So all these teams did. All right. So all those teams qualified there. I'm just going through this. All right. So yeah, they're all those teams that we still have remaining qualified in top 50 as well as the top 30. So that's the bigger thing. All right. So now we'll move on to field goal percentage. All right. So team field goal percentage, this makes sense, right? You want to have a high field goal percentage. That means you have a consistent offense and you need to obviously score points to win games. So for this metric, you want to be in the top 100 overall. So top 100 field goal percentage is the next metric. And the top 100 field goal percentage, this is not as strong. The last 32 teams to make the Final Four, 24 of them met this criteria. 8 didn't. So 24 and 8. You know, I mean, 2/3. It's 60. You know, 66% is not bad. But we're always interested in numbers. So in terms of the teams that we have left for the Final Four, top 100 field goal percentage, Houston qualifies. Alabama does not qualify. All right, so Alabama does not qualify for top 100 in field goal percentage. Kansas does qualify for the top 100 in field goal percentage. UCLA does qualify. Texas qualifies. Arizona qualifies. Duke does not. So we're getting a little separation now from the teams that we have left. Duke did not finish top 100 percentile, the top 100 rather in field goal percentage. UConn did qualify, and Creighton did qualify in the top 100. Tennessee did not. All right, so Tennessee's starting to get warts too. All right, so that's a good number there. All right, so Ken Pom is not the only stats guy. All right, so there's another gentleman by the name of Bardovic. That's his last name. I don't remember his first name, but he also has a stat site that's gotten a lot of attention, sort of like Ken Pom Light. And he's got some really interesting numbers too that I added to this as well. I just added these numbers this year. According to this website, all right, Bardovic, using his numbers going into the tournament, 54 of the last 56 Final Four teams were top 50 overall in his efficiency metrics. All right, so we talked about Ken Pom's top 20, which you needed to qualify at. For this guy, Bardovic, his top 50, 54 of the 56 last Final Four teams met this criteria. That's a huge number. All right. Out of the teams that we have left, Houston made it, Alabama made it, Kansas made it, UCLA made it, Texas, Arizona, Duke, UConn, Creighton, Tennessee. So again, every team made it. So again, I'm just going through these one at a time so you can make the check marks next year to these teams. All right. Remember, we're down to Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Texas, Arizona, Duke, UConn, Creighton, and Tennessee. All right. Now, Bardovic, again, now we're going to look at his defensive efficiency, not his offense. His offensive efficiency number weren't strong enough, but his defensive efficiency number, top 70. All right. Out of the last 56 Final Four teams, this also had 54 of 56 qualifying in the Final Four with a top 70 defensive efficiency. All right. Now here we get some movement. Houston qualified, Alabama qualified, Kansas qualified, UCLA qualified, Texas qualified, Arizona qualified, Duke qualified, UConn qualified, Creighton qualified, and Tennessee. Oh, I apologize. All these teams qualified too. So they both were top 50 in offense and top 70 in defensive efficiency. All right. I was looking at Baylor, who didn't qualify, but we already eliminated Baylor. And Gonzaga didn't qualify either. All right. But we eliminated them as well. All right. And then his last one, Bardovic, they needed to be in the top 175 in effective field goal percentage. So again, a field goal percentage number, top 175 effective field goal percentage. The only team that are the ones that we have left that didn't qualify was Tennessee. So Tennessee's offense has been bad. They did not qualify as well. All right. Okay. And now last but not least, so we're down to our last Final Four trends. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different metrics to come up with our Final Four teams. This one, they have to be in the top 100 in turnover rate. Now, this is a good one because if you turn the ball over a lot, you're not going to make the Final Four. I'm sorry. You're giving the other team possessions. You're hurting yourself. You're not going to make it. So Houston qualifies. All right, they're good. Alabama did not. So that's another one for Alabama. They didn't finish in the top 100 in field goal percentage, and they are not qualifying for the top 100 in turnover rate. All right. Kansas qualified, UCLA qualified, Texas qualified, Arizona did not qualify. Arizona did not make the cut, top 100 turnover rate. That's a mark on. Duke did not. UConn did not. Creighton did not. Tennessee did. So that's a pock mark against those teams. This one is a little bit divisive as well. Okay. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. So we went through 16 metrics to come up with our teams that have the best chance statistically of making the Final Four. Now we're down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams. All right. Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Texas, Arizona, Duke, UConn, Creighton, and Tennessee. Those 10 teams to this point have the best shot to make the Final Four. Now, out of all those 16 metrics we just talked about, I added them all up, okay? And there's two teams that meet all 16 of these. Houston and UCLA. Houston and UCLA both qualify for all 16. That's a huge number. Now listen, no shock with Houston, all right? With Marcus Sasser is ready to go, this team, you just write them in the Final Four now. I know Texas is in that bracket, but, Colgate can shoot the lights out in round one. Texas does not shoot the three that well. They're going to get a strong Texas A&M team or a lights out shooting Penn State team in round two. So Texas has a much more difficult schedule, potential route to the Final Four than does Houston. So Houston qualifies in all 16 of these metrics we just talked about. So they're right at the top there. UCLA is the only other team that met all 16 of these metrics. Now, the thing with UCLA is they have injuries, all right? And this is something that really might skew these numbers. Jaden Clark, their best on-ball defender, is out with a torn ACL. And Adema Bona has a shoulder injury. He is a big rebounder for them. We talked about how great UCLA's defense is. Losing those two guys is big. Tiger Campbell and Jaquez, those are two prime players for UCLA. But that's a little dangerous for them, in that West bracket, especially with Kansas in there. But again, Houston and UCLA are the only two teams that qualify in terms of making the Final Four with all 16 of these metrics that we just talked about. And if you just jumped on now, you can always go back and watch the program when we're done. Went through 16 different strategies, methods, whatever you want to call it, to weed out who we think is the best Final Four teams. And according to those 16, Houston and UCLA are the only two to qualify for all 16. All right. As out of the 10 teams that we had left. Now, next on this list is Texas with 14. So Texas qualifies with 14. This is a really good Texas team, but they're in the same bracket as Houston, and a fully functioning Houston team with Marcus Sasser. If they play Texas, I think you gotta give it to Houston. And I'm gonna go on the premise that Sasser is gonna be okay because he's supposed to play in the opener. And since they're playing Northern Kentucky, they don't need him. But the fact that he's probably going to play is a good sign. And listen, I think Texas is coming into this as hot as any team in the country. I don't like the fact that they have an untested coach leading them there. That's a big issue for me. Having a coach that's not battle tested, as good of a job as he's done. I am a little bit worried with Rodney Terry there being in charge. That's a little scary to me. I'll take Kelvin Sampson over him any day. So, but again, Texas number 2, they qualified in 14 of these 16. 15 of these 16 systems here. All right, now number 3, Alabama. Alabama qualifies in 14, and again, that makes sense. Alabama's really strong. I don't think there's any doubt if there was no controversy around Brandon Miller, who reminds me of Kevin Durant, and that's about as good a compliment as I can give any basketball player. The way he fills it up, Brandon Miller, he could just take over any game. He's got Kevin Durant kind of skills. I think Alabama has a really good path to the Final Four as well. And since they qualified with 14 of these metrics, I think that's a really good setup for them going into the tournament. All right, so we talked about Texas. So we had 16 for UCLA, 16 for Houston, 15 for Texas, 14 out of 16 for Alabama. All right. In terms of the other teams that we have left, we have sorry, it's just a lot of numbers in front of me. I just want to make sure I have this right before. All right. So Arizona and UConn both are at 13. All right. So Arizona and UConn both are at 13. They're 13 out of 16, they qualify. All right. So that's pretty strong for sure. Now we talked about, I missed Kansas, guys. I apologize. So Kansas is 14 along with Alabama. All right. So Houston, 16 out of 16. UCLA qualifies for 16 out of 16. Texas qualifies 15 out of the 16 metrics. Alabama and Kansas are 14 and 14 each. And then Arizona and UConn are 13 each. All right. So 13 each for Arizona and UConn. And as far as Creighton and Duke are concerned, each of them finish with 10. All right. So each of them finish at 10. So Duke and Creighton have 10. Tennessee also finishes at 10, but I think this team is really scary to trust right now. Having the point guard get injured, I would not put Tennessee anywhere near a Final Four, even though they qualify for 10 of these 16 metrics. So I would be very leery of him as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. So let's reiterate that now. I know I just threw a whole bunch of numbers at you. So those who just came in, the Final Four metrics, we use 16 metrics for the Final Four. Houston finished it, and UCLA finished first, qualifying with all 16. Texas, third, with qualifying 15 out of 16. Kansas and Alabama qualify out of 14 out of 16, so they make up the top 5. Then you have, all right, Arizona and UConn with 13. And then you have, Creighton. Creighton has, they're in 11. All right. I missed one. So Creighton qualifies for 11. Duke qualifies for 10. And Tennessee also 10. I'm not trusting Tennessee at all. All right. So what are we doing with all this, right? I just gave you, clearly, Houston and UCLA stand above the rest. All right. They each qualified 16 out of 16 of the metrics to reach the Final Four. And again, those who are just coming in, we just finished our Final Four study where we use 16 metrics based on historical data. And then you could go back and watch it. We went through all 16 metrics, and Houston and UCLA stand above everybody else in terms of probability of making the Final Four, qualifying for 16 out of 16 metrics. That being said, UCLA has some injury issues. And with Kansas qualifying with 14 out of 16, perhaps Kansas is the better bet. So let's go region by region. So in the South, you have Alabama, which is one of the last 10 teams we were looking at. You have Creighton. You have Arizona. So you have 3 teams that based on this should make it to the hi Leafy, how you doing? That should make it to the Final Four. I can't see Creighton. I just can't see Creighton doing it. I can't get there with Creighton getting to the Final Four. Arizona certainly has the talent. I don't like the fact that Arizona, they still have an untested coach. Their defense, not fantastic. And their turnover rate, they did not qualify, a big one, and they did not qualify with the top 100 in turnover rate. So I'm leery on Arizona. I'm putting Alabama in the Final Four. All right. And I think the majority of brackets are going to have Alabama in the Final Four. Listen, they're just so damn good. They have a Kevin Durant player in Miller. They shoot it the three at a high rate. Very athletic. They push the pace. They check a lot of the boxes of what a Final Four team looks like. So I'm comfortable having Alabama in there. All right, now in the East is the crazy, scary bracket. All right, we talked about Purdue. We eliminated Purdue halfway through our Final Four exercise because 34 teams in history began the season unranked, and then were given a top 2 seed for the tournament. Out of those 34 teams or 33 teams, none of them made the Final Four. All right, it was 33 or 34. I forget now. None of those teams made the Final Four. 34 teams. So Purdue and Marquette in the same East region started the year unranked. Were given top 2 seeds. 34 teams that fit that profile before them. None of them made the Final Four. You have to toss out Marquette. You have to toss out Purdue. Then that leaves you with Duke, who qualified in 10 of the 16 metrics. Not great, but they're as hot as a pistol right now. And then you have, I didn't talk about Kansas State. I didn't throw Kansas State into this discussion with the Final Four. Perhaps I should have. Their metrics weren't very good, but they come from the Big 12. They have really good, they have good guard play. Perhaps this could be a bracket where you take a shot on a team like Kansas State as the 3 seed, or even going with Duke. And Tennessee, don't get me started on Tennessee, all right? I'm not touching Tennessee. I know they made the final 10 in our cut there, but I am a huge proponent of betting against Rick Barnes any chance you possibly could get. And that goes for this season as well. Always historically has his teams go out early. Zakai Ziegler, their point guard, is out for the tournament. That's a huge loss. They lost 6 of their last 10 games, and they have a coach who doesn't know how to win in the postseason. So I am not touching Tennessee. I would never consider them. The only 2 teams I would consider Final Four out of this bracket, and this is the one where you're going to either win or lose your bracket. I really, really believe the East is the chaos one. I would go with either Duke or Kansas State. Duke makes me nervous because of an untested coach, and they get a very good Oral Roberts team with Max Asmus, who can really fill it up, averaging over 20 a game. That's scary to me. If Duke can get through Oral Roberts, I think they're going to be okay because I think they would destroy Tennessee. I think Duke would really give Purdue a lot of problems. Kyle Flipkowski's been playing great. Jeremy Roach gives them that upper class leadership that they need. This team's gotten better as the season's gone on there. They finished very strongly, winning the AAC tournament. So I'm really a big fan of Duke, in this region. And I do like Kansas State. So I would go with either one of those teams. All right. Kentucky, some wise guy's going to pick Kentucky. This is not a Kentucky Final Four team. There's going to be a Michigan State apologist. That's not going to happen. I can't pick Purdue based on that stat I gave you. Same thing with Marquette. So I'm going to go either Duke or Kansas State in that region. And then it gives yourself a 5 or a 3. The one thing I will say about Kansas State, they come from the very good Big 12, which is a very good feather in their cap. They are a battle-tested team all season, and they have a very, very good pair of players here, with Keontae Johnson. Remember, he's the guy who almost died on the court while at Florida. Florida didn't clear him. He transferred to Kansas State. He's averaging over 17 a game, one of the best transfers of any team in the country. And Marquise Noel, anybody had seen Kansas State play, Marquise Noel, the point guard, is fantastic. He's a small guy, but he could shoot it, and he is a classic point guard that's going to constantly set this team up with good possessions. I really like Kansas State. Jerome Tang, the head coach, has done a fantastic job. He, too, is untested, as is John Shire. But, Jerome Tang's done a great job. I'm going to go with either one of those teams to come out of that bracket. All right, now, as far as the Midwest, you have Houston, who I love. Texas is the other team that qualifies in this bracket, in this system that I've been talking about. Texas A&M's a good team, but they got a bad draw. Xavier, they're an extreme team. You throw out the extreme teams right away. They can't stop anybody on defense. They got absolutely blitzed by Marquette in the Big East tournament. And I don't like Iowa or Auburn. So it's either going to be Houston or Texas for me. I'm going to go with the head coaching experience. I'm going to go with the fact that not only do you have Marcus Sasser, but Jamal Sheed. I think that Jamal Sheed is just as good of a player as Marcus Sasser. So I have Houston in the Final Four. So it's 2 1s and then a 3 in Kansas State. And then in the West, you have Kansas, who is a favorite of this Final Four system that I talked about. I tossed UConn. I don't like UConn's coach. I know they qualified 13 of 16, which is pretty good, just like Arizona. But Danny Hurley's gone out in the first round each of the last 2 years. And how about this too? UConn gets Rick Pitino in round 1 with Iona. That is a scary as F matchup. And then they could get VCU, the rampaging VCU in round 2. I'm really scared for UConn against Iona. I really am. Iona is very well balanced. They got double-digit scoring throughout their lineup. I just can't get behind UConn, not with the coach and not with the matchups there. So for me, it's either going to be Kansas or UCLA. I'm not taking Gonzaga. I know people are going to put Gonzaga. They're going to think, oh, it's a 3 seed. Perfect opportunity to not have 4 number ones. I could throw a 3 seed in there with the pedigree of Gonzaga, the coaching of Mark Few. I love it. No, they're an extreme team. Extreme teams do not make the Final Four. 150 plus extreme teams since 2002, only 4 made the Final Four. 0.3%. You don't go with an extreme team. So it's UCLA or Kansas. UCLA's injuries are really problematic for me. Kansas has got 17. This is a stat that wasn't talked about enough. Kansas has 17 quad A wins. That is quad 1 wins. That is just ridiculous. That is ridiculous to win 17 quad A games, quad 1 games. I keep saying quad A, quad 1 games. So I think it's going to be Kansas coming out of that bracket. So Houston, Kansas, Alabama, 3 1s and a 3 in Kansas State. Or you could throw Duke in there as a 5. I'm fine with that. If you want to go UCLA over Kansas, I'm okay with that as long as they get back, a demo. I think that they need his rebounding. So, Jaquez and Tigger Campbell, those are 2 good leaders, good offensive players for UCLA. So I'm fine putting UCLA in there as well. So if you had a 1 in UCLA, a 2 in UCLA, a 1 in Kentucky, Houston, a 1 in Alabama, and a 3 in Kansas State or a 5 in Duke, I think you're good with that. So, Alabama for sure. All right. And Houston for sure. I'm definitely putting those 2 in, as long as Sasser is good to go before the tournament. You could go Kansas or UCLA. If I had a gun to my head, I would put Kansas, and then I would probably go Kansas State over Duke because I just hate that Oral Roberts matchup in the first round. So that's how I see the Final Four games. All right? That's how I see the Final Four games. Now, that leads me into picking the championship winner. I've done this 3 of the last 4 years. I picked Villanova correctly. 2018, 2019, I nailed it with Virginia. Last season, I nailed it with Kansas. All right. So this system has worked very good, coming up with the winner. And of course, you need to come up with the winner to win your pool. All right. So using those teams, Houston that we just talked about, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Texas, and I'm not picking Arizona, so I'm not going to use them. Let's just talk about those teams. All right, Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, and Texas. So 5 teams to win it all. All right. The first stat, and this is a good one, out of the last 44 national champions, and now we're talking about the winners here, okay? Out of the last 44 national champions, 41 had a McDonald's All-American on the roster. All right. So 41 has a 41 of the 44 winds up winning the championship with a McDonald's All-American on their team. So looking at these teams, all 5 have a McDonald's All-American. All right. Houston has one. Alabama has multiple. Kansas, they're good there. UCLA, Texas has 3. So all 5 of these teams have a McDonald's All-American. That's a big one. They have to have a McDonald's All-American. Like Purdue, they don't have a McDonald's All-American. So Purdue's not winning the title. We already said they're not making a Final Four. They're not winning the title. Arizona does not have an All-American. All right. UConn doesn't have an All-American. So those 5 teams I gave you all have All-Americans. So they're going to be on their way with a good chance of winning it. All right. Teams that win their first conference tournament game. All right. That's always a big one. So Baylor lost their first conference tournament game this year. That's another reason that we threw them out without even, without a care in the world. Baylor was never going to win it all this year. But again, Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Texas all won their first conference game. So they're good there as well. All right. So we can skip over that one. And here's one that's going to start diverting things. The last 20 national champions, all 20 teams had a coach who previously went to the Sweet 16. All 20. Ready? For this exercise, out of these 5 that we're sitting here with, Houston has a coach that's been to the Sweet 16. Alabama has gotten to the Sweet 16 with Nate Oates. Obviously, Kansas, Bill Self has made the Sweet 16. UCLA, Mick Cronin has made the Sweet 16 with UCLA there. But Texas has not made a Sweet 16 with their coach. All right. So Rodney Terry has not made a Sweet 16. So that's something that it's a big negative on Texas right off the bat. And you want an experienced coach in the championship game for obvious reasons. So that's a line of demarcation there for Texas. All right. You want teams that you shoot 70% from the free throw line. All right. That's self-explanatory. Anybody, Villanova was so good at the free throw line that helped them win the championship. Virginia was good at the free throw line. That helped them win that year as well. They were solid there. The Baylor was always, when they won, they were a good free throw shooting team also. So all 5 of these teams, Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, Texas, they all shoot 70% from the line. So that's good. All right. All of these teams also qualify in the top 20 overall in KenPom, which we talked about with the Final Four. Now, top 20 adjusted offense. Okay. Kansas doesn't qualify. All right. We talked about this with the Final Four. So Houston, Alabama are in the top 20 in KenPom adjusted offense. So is Texas, and so is UCLA. All right. Kansas does not. UCLA also does not. So that's 3 of the 5 teams that qualify. So KenPom, top 20 adjusted offense. Houston qualifies. Alabama qualifies. Kansas does not. UCLA does not. And Texas does. Okay. So now we have Kansas and UCLA with a demerit. Okay. Houston, Alabama is still perfect. All right. And as far as that being in the top 20 adjusted offense, 21 of the last 22 champions. 21 of the last 22 champions had an adjusted O in the top 20. And I also failed to mention the top 20 in KenPom overall, 21 of the 22 teams, of the last 22 teams. All right. We're also there as well. Now, single digits adjusted offense, 15 of the last 20 champs were in single digits in adjusted offense. Ironically enough, none of these teams qualify for that, so we can toss this one. That's good. All right, so none of these 5 teams are in the top single digits. All right, turnovers per possession, 19 of the last 20 teams that won the championship were in the top 100 in turnovers per possession. Houston is in the top 100. Alabama is not. Kansas is not in the top 100. UCLA is, and Texas is in the top 100 top 100 turnovers per possession. So Alabama and Kansas are a little bit loose with the basketball. All right, they're all top 4 seeds. We don't need to go over that. Reaching the final of their conference tournament, 31 of the 37 previous champions, 31 of 37 previous champions reached their final of the conference tournament. All 5 of these teams qualified. Okay, so we're good there. No issues. And then adjusted KenPom defense have to be 40 or better. 19 of the last 20 teams, all 5 of these teams qualified as well. So 19 of the last 20 champions all qualified in the adjusted defense. All right. So now with that said, let's figure out, since we already went through the Final Four, we only have 5 teams I think that really are worthy of winning the championship. Let's add it up on the relevant ones. So Houston, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 11 for Houston. All right. So 11, 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So Houston qualifies for all 11. So 11 for 11. So Houston, championship team, 11 out of 11, they qualify. Alabama, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 for Alabama, 10 out of 11. Kansas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 for Kansas out of 11. UCLA, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 out of 11 for UCLA. Again, they have injuries. And then Texas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 out of 11 for Texas. All right, so 10 out of 11 for Texas. 10 out of 11 qualifiers for UCLA. 9 out of 11 for Kansas. 10 out of 11 for Alabama. And 11 out of 11 for Houston. So these 5 teams, Houston's perfect at 11 of 11. Alabama, 10 of 11. Kansas, 9 of 11, the weakest of the 5. UCLA, 10 out of 11, but they have a lot of injuries. And then Texas qualifies in 10 out of the 11 metrics to predict a national championship team. So Houston, the best bet to win it all. I think they're a pick for sure. Alabama, right there with him. I'm not comfortable picking UCLA with their injuries to win it all. Kansas, I'm not comfortable picking Texas again with the coaching situation. And they have a tough path. Really, it's Alabama and Houston. I think Alabama and Houston are 1A and 1B, in my opinion. I think either one of them could win it all. So we're going under the assumption that Marcus Sasser is going to be fine. And then Kansas, can Kansas win it all again? I think they could. You know, Grady Dick was a tremendous addition to this team. They have Jalen Wilson as well. So this is a very talented Kansas team. So I think if I were to rank them, I think Alabama, Houston are 1A and 1B. Either one of them. If you do 2 brackets, you pick one Alabama, you pick one Houston. I think I would go Kansas 3. I would go UCLA 4 and Texas 5. Mick Cronin knows what he's doing. They're 2 most talented players in UCLA are still there. UCLA is graded out really good, but the injuries scare me. So Houston, Alabama, those are the teams that have the best chance to win it all for me. All right, now, oh man, I'm exhausted. We've been doing this for almost an hour and a half now. So, and again, this video, I'm sure after the fact, everybody's gonna be checking it out, and you'll be able to rewind or go back, I should say. It's not a VCR, right? We'll go back and look at everything. But now I want to take each bracket region by region. Because we already talked about who I think will be in the Final Four and who's going to win it all. But you probably want me to do the entire bracket. So I'm going to attempt to work through the muck here to help with your selections throughout the rest of the bracket. So we'll start off with the South bracket, the South region. Alabama playing Texas A&M. Brandon Miller is a gem. They're going to coast on to the second round. So Alabama is going to win. And then Maryland, West Virginia. So they're going to kick off the fun 12:15 on Thursday, Maryland against West Virginia. I like the fact that West Virginia is coming from the much more battle-tested region. Maryland, they've done a nice job under Kevin Willard. Jameer Young is a really good guard. Eric Stevenson, though, can fill it up for West Virginia. I like West Virginia to come out on top in this one. I think Bob Huggins is a slightly better coach than Kevin Willard. I think West Virginia certainly comes from a much tougher conference. But going forward, remember what I said to you guys, that teams with losing records in conference play in their conference do not advance to the Sweet 16. All right. So you're only going to put West Virginia on one spot there. All right. So to me, the scariest part of the entire bracket is right here. San Diego State against Charleston and Virginia against Furman. No scenario here would be surprising. I could see Charleston beating San Diego State, who struggles to score. As great as they are defensively, they really go through drought scoring. And then Virginia against Furman. Furman is a really good team. They've won big 5 of the last 6 years. They only managed, but they struggled in a conference tournament. They finally got over the hump this year. This is a very senior-laden team as well in Furman. Virginia plays so slow and so methodical that it leads to the situation that where they became the first number 1 seed when they lost to UMBC. So I'm very scared of both of these matchups. I think Furman has an excellent chance to knock off Virginia. I really do. San Diego State was knocked out of the first round last season. I think they're going to be more prepared this, and so was Virginia. But I think San Diego State, they really have tremendous defensive players. Charleston's no pushover. They have 6 players that average between 9 and 12.3 points. It's a well-balanced team, and they're 31-3 for a reason. But I just think San Diego State's going to come out on top. I'm going to go with Furman over Virginia, and then I'll have San Diego State knock off Furman, and I have Alabama knocking off West Virginia, and then Alabama knocking off San Diego State. But again, if Charleston upsets San Diego State and Virginia beat Furman, nothing would surprise me about that. That's why I don't have either Virginia or San Diego State going past the Sweet 16. So that could be where there's some red marks in a lot of brackets. All right, Creighton. I really like this Creighton team. Ryan Kalkbrenner, Ryan Nembhard, the 2 Ryans, very, very good defensive team. They have some shooters. They always have shooters at Creighton, but they're not very deep. So if Creighton runs into some foul trouble, Kalkbrenner gets into foul trouble, they don't go deep. That could be trouble. NC State's back in the tournament for the first time in a while. But this Creighton team coming into the season had Final Four potential. And while I don't think they're going to get there, this is a battle-tested team. I really like Creighton to win this matchup. All right, Baylor. I think they're going to beat UC Santa Barbara, but I hate this Baylor team. You're going to give me Keontae George, LJ Cryer, Adam Flagler, no doubt, guys that can fill it up, without much effort, right? So they're going to win their first round matchup. I think Creighton knocks them off in round 2. Creighton does a really good job defensively. They're going to get up into the grill, those 3 guys. Baylor's defense sucks beyond belief. They are just as bad as Gonzaga. Their defense is horrible, Baylor. Creighton can score the basketball. It's going to be a problem. I think Creighton is going to upset Baylor in round 2. Missouri, Utah State. I think Missouri is a paper tiger. They weren't expected to do much this year. They did surprise. I'll give them credit there. But this Utah State team, I know they've been snake bitten in the tournament for years. They're ranked 18th in Ken Pomeroy, which is higher than Missouri. They have Ryan Odom is the coach, and there's the name UMBC. Ryan Odom, the coach of UMBC, is now the coach at Utah State. So he knows how to win in round 1. So I think Utah State is going to beat Missouri and advance to play Arizona, who's going to knock off Princeton. And then from there, I like Arizona to beat Utah State. I said Creighton over Baylor. I don't like Baylor. And then I think Arizona is going to knock off Creighton, although it wouldn't surprise me if Creighton knocked off Arizona either. I really do like this Creighton team. I think it sets up Alabama and Arizona, a 1-2 matchup in the South. And I do have Alabama making the Final Four and ultimately making the championship as well. And then any guys who are just coming in, we've been on for almost an hour and a half. Make sure when this is over, when the stream is over, you go back and watch. Went through all of these strategies for picking upsets in round one, went through all the Final Four strategies, which was 16 deep, to identify the teams that have the best chance to be the Final Four. And then we just went through the national championships strategies to the teams where we identified the teams that have the best chance to win it. Now I'm just simply going through the rest of the bracket, give you my picks. The East bracket, this is the chaos bracket. As I said, there's a lot of historically underachieving teams here. Purdue, Tennessee, I always bet against both of those teams. Marquette, Shaka Smart has really struggled in the tournament outside of his initial success with VCU. He has not done well in the first round there. So there's a lot of trouble. You have a first-year coach, John Shire at Duke, even though they're playing really well. Michigan State can really light it up from deep, but USC is a quality team as well. I really like this Kansas State team coming from the Big 12. They have a lot of talent, and Kansas State looks like a scary team for me. I've been really high on them all year, but let's take it one by one. Purdue's going to knock off whoever comes out of Texas Southern and FDU. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, really, really great first-round matchup, the 8-9 matchup, Memphis against Florida Atlantic. Kendrick Davis is a tremendous guard for Memphis. Memphis just knocked off Houston, albeit without Marcus Sasser there. I think this is a very good athletic Memphis team who could give Purdue major fits in round two. Even if Florida Atlantic comes out on top and defeats Memphis, which is something that I think could happen. They're 31-3 for a reason. Either one of those teams really going to give Purdue a hard time. Even though Zach Edey, great player, national player of the year for sure. I think Purdue, with their perennial problems winning in the tournament, Memphis especially, I think is going to give them a hard time. I'm going to pick Memphis over Florida Atlantic. Do I have the guts to take Memphis over to Purdue? I might. I think I'm still going to pick Purdue just to hedge my bet because, again, you don't want to blow the early part of the bracket. You might say, oh, you're picking a lot of chalk. Well, because if you can lose the bracket in the first 2 days as opposed to later on. Working down the list here, Duke, Oral Roberts. This is a scary matchup, Oral Roberts for Duke. I had toyed putting Duke in the Final Four, but they could lose to Oral Roberts. Remember, this was a team that went to the Sweet 16 a couple of years ago as a 15 seed, and Max Asmus, who's averaging 22.2 a game, is back. Same guy from a couple of years ago is still with Oral Roberts, who is red hot as well. Duke, too. Red hot. Kyle Flipkowski, the freshman's done a great job. Jeremy Roach has really stepped up. John Shire, can he coach the Giant Shadow? In the Giant Shadow, Mike Krzyzewski in the postseason, we're going to see. There are a couple of brackets. I'll pick Oral Roberts, but I'm going to take Duke for the sake of this video here. Tennessee, Louisiana. Man, Tennessee is in deep shit. They really are. They lost to Kai Ziegler, their point guard. When you lose your starting point guard going into the tournament, it's big trouble. They've lost 6 of 10 games leading into this. Rick Barnes always bows out early in the tournament. He's a terrible, terrible tournament coach. Would it shock me if they lose to Louisiana? No. I think they're so good defensively that they will win this game, but then Duke is going to knock the hell out of them in round 2. If it's Oral Roberts, I think Oral Roberts would beat Tennessee. So I only have Tennessee winning 1 game. I have Purdue against Duke, and then I'm going to have Duke knock off Purdue. I think Duke can absolutely give Edey fits. I have Duke advancing beyond Purdue there. All right, Kentucky, Providence. The knee-jerk reaction is, oh, it's Kentucky. It's John Calipari. They're going to win. Listen, Ed Cooley is a tremendous tournament coach. He's another coach, and I mentioned in the beginning of the stream, coaches that tend to win in the tournament, at least early on. Ed Cooley is one of them. Everybody picked against him, and they played South Dakota State in the first round last year. Providence blew them out of the water. They had, they had a really good tournament. Providence has a great shooting team. They really could light it up from the outside. And here's the ironic thing. All right, Bryce Hopkins, the former Kentucky Wildcat is now lighting it up for Providence. So Bryce Hopkins. Providence is coming in. They've lost 4 out of 5 coming in, so that's a negative. But Bryce Hopkins is certainly going to be motivated to show his old team that he's the real deal. So the NCAA, the selection committee certainly has a lot of, they have some foresight to give you a matchup that people are going to be paying attention to. I like Kentucky to come out of this one. I think Calipari is going to respond with the pressure. Kansas State's going to beat Montana State. Michigan State, USC. USC is a good team, but I always go Izzo no matter what. It's like a habit to pick him. And I have Marquette against Vermont. Vermont seems to be a staple coming out of the America East. Round 2, Marquette. Tyler Kolek is the real deal. Player of the year, Big East player of the tournament. Marquette really started to shore up their defense late, especially in the Big East tournament, which is good to see. So I think they'll beat Michigan State. I have Kansas State knocking off Kentucky, like I said. And then I have Kansas State knocking off Marquette. I think, like I said, Kansas State, Jerome Tang's done a great job. Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, really good players. I think they're going to knock off Marquette. And then I have Kansas State knocking off Duke as a number 3 seed. I'm putting them in the Final Four. But if you put Duke in the Final Four, I'm fine with that as well. Remember, I'm going to have more than one bracket. So I'm probably going to put Duke in the Final Four in some of them. I'm going to have Kansas State in the other. No way in hell am I putting Marquette in. No way in hell am I putting Purdue in for those reasons we talked about earlier. And then the Final Four, the final 2 there on this side, Alabama against Kansas State. I'm going to put Alabama in the national championship. All right, let's look at the Midwest. Houston, Marcus Sasser looks like he's going to be all right. Jamal Sheed, 2 prime battle-tested warriors who've been with this program for a while. They've gone to the Final Four and the Elite 8 the last 2 years. Kelvin Sampson is a great coach. They'll beat Northern Kentucky. Iowa, Auburn. This is going to be held in Auburn's backyard, so you got to almost think that Auburn is going to come away with this one. Chris Murray averaging 20.5 a game for Iowa, the brother of Keegan Murray, the former Iowa great. Iowa can shoot it. They're I believe, number 3 in advanced metrics for the offense for Ken Pom there. But Auburn, Bruce Pearl does a good job in the tournament, whereas Fran McCaffrey has struggled. And again, I always like to go back to coaching. I like Auburn to win this game. These will be close. I just don't like Fran McCaffrey. First of all, he's a jerk. I think Auburn's going to win this game. They have the advantage of being in their own backyard there. Miami coming in, they have some injuries themselves, but I like Jim Larinaga. They went to the Elite 8 last year. Jim Larinaga is a proven coach. George Mason brought them to the Final Four. You always go with coaches that tend to win in a tournament. Larinaga is one of them. I'm going to pick them over Drake. I know people are going to pick Drake. Isaiah Wong is the real deal. Johnny Broome, Wendell Green. This is a good Miami backcourt. They have the guard play. I think they're going to win this game. Indiana against Kent State. I really, really like Mike Woodson. I think he's a good coach. Trace Jackson Davis is a star. I think Indiana is going to win this game. Kent State is a good team, though. I think Kent State's going to give them a scare. Don't have the courage to take them, though. All right, Iowa State against Mississippi State, Pittsburgh winner. Iowa State's going to win that. I know they dismissed Caleb Grill who was their 3rd leading scorer, but I like Iowa State. This is a team that does their best work down the stretch. They struggle. They really struggle scoring the basketball, but they are a hell of a team on the defensive side. They stepped up last year in the tournament. They really went pretty far, a lot further than people thought. Mississippi State, I don't think should be in this. I think Rutgers should be. Whether it's Pitt or Mississippi State, Iowa's going to win that game. Xavier, Sully Brown, this team can shoot the lights out, but they have no defense to speak of. They were blown out by Marquette in the final of the Big East tournament. Really bad luck. Kennesaw State, first-year teams don't win in the tournament. You got to pick Xavier there. Texas A&M, who got screwed by the committee. Their seed was way too low. They should have been a higher seed. This is a very talented team that finished strong. They're taking on Penn State, who can also shoot the lights out. And it's really dangerous when you play a team such as Penn State, when you have multiple guys who can really shoot. If they get hot one game, they're going to beat you. I think Texas A&M is a good team, though, and I'm going to go with them there. Texas against Colgate. Marcus Curry, so Jabari Rice, very good players. Rodney Terry, the coach. They finished very, they were strong as well. They get a Colgate team, though, that does concern me. I think Colgate is the best 15 seed. I think they should have been a 14. How about this? They shoot 40.8 from 3 as a team. That's number 1 in all of college basketball Division I. They've won 17 straight games. I've talked to you about my concerns about the coach. That's why I won't pick Texas to go to the Final Four or to win it all, because I'm afraid of them getting beaten by a Colgate or beaten by a Texas A&M. That could happen. I respect Texas tremendously, but I don't have the confidence. I've seen Texas is now like the sweetheart pick to go to the Final Four. Colgate 40.8 from three, and then you have Texas A&M or Penn State in round 2. That is scary with a coach in Rodney Terry who is tremendously untested in a pressure situation such as this. All right, next, breaking it down even further, I have Houston knocking off Auburn. Indiana, I'm going to have knock off Miami. I think Indiana is really good. And then Houston will knock off Indiana. Iowa State, Xavier. I'm picking Iowa State over Xavier. I think Iowa State's really going to slow it down. And here's the thing. Iowa State, one of the best teams in all of college basketball defending the three. They're going to give Xavier fits. One thing about Marquette, they really got into the faces, the grills of the Xavier shooters, and that's why they won so easily during the finals of the Big East tournament. They really handed it to them there. I really think that Iowa State, who's done very well in the tournament, they're going to be moving on, and then they're going to play. I have Texas. I'm so scared about Texas, and I have them beating Iowa State. But then I have Houston knocking off Texas, going to the Final Four. All right. The bottom of the bracket, Kansas. I really like this Kansas team. 17 quad one wins. That's just absurd. Really, really good team. Bill Self will be coaching. I know he missed the tournament because he was getting a stent put in. He should be okay. They will beat Howard. Arkansas against Illinois. Really good matchup. I like Arkansas. I think Musselman's a good coach. I don't trust Illinois. Not going to put Arkansas beyond that, though. Same year as VCU. I'm all on VCU. Gave you a stat earlier. Non-major conference teams that are 5 seed or better tend to are susceptible historically for being upset in round 1. I think VCU is going to beat them. The Atlantic 10, they really lit it up. They did a great job. This is a team that really turns you over, havoc, whatever you want to call it. This is a good VCU team. I think they're going to win this game. UConn against Iona. Man, Adama Sanogo is a tremendous player for UConn. They have their go-to guy, but Dan Hurley has lost in the first round. The last 2 years, even though he had NBA players on his team, they get Iona 14 straight wins, 3 players averaging 15 or more during that stretch. Iona's legit. They have Rick Pitino, who's going to be leaving. They're going to go all out for their coach. That is a horrible matchup for UConn, a team that I'm already leery of because I can't stand the coach. I always fade coaches that struggle in a tournament. Hurley is one of them. But I'm going to pick UConn just because I still think they're going to squeak it out. And I can't imagine Hurley losing 3 straight in first round, although, I just don't respect him as a coach. TCU against Arizona State, Nevada. Mike Miles is a really good player. And TCU, for all the struggles they have scoring, they should have beaten Arizona. They got screwed by the refs last year. There is some Eddie Lampkin left the program because he's accusing Jamie Dixon of racism, which is, not a good situation there. But TCU should handle Arizona State and Nevada. Gonzaga lead the country in scoring and field goal percentage. They're going to take on Grand Canyon. Bashan Hamilton, 17.7 a game for Grand Canyon. They are coached by Bryce Drew, who hit that iconic 3-pointer to open the tournament a number of years ago. But Gonzaga is going to win this team. And Gonzaga, listen, they're playing really well. I know I didn't pick them for the Final Four. I have my reservations about them. Their defense is terrible. They're an extreme team. That's a problem for me. I don't like those extreme teams in the tournament to go to the Final Four. But they should win a couple of games for sure. Northwestern against Boise State, second career tournament appearance for Northwestern. Boise State, listen, Boise State's done a really nice job. They split with Utah State. They did beat San Diego State, the Mountain West champs, the Boise State. So they got some big wins on their resume. Boise State's due to win in the tournament. I think they're going to beat Northwestern. UCLA will beat UNC Asheville. Jaime Jaquez, Tigger Campbell will help make up for Jaden Clark's season-ending injury, which is a big one. Big reason why they're so good defensively is because of Clark. I think, and Adem Bona has a shoulder injury. I think he will be okay. But UCLA will win this game. So next round, UCLA, I think they're going to knock off Boise State. Then I have Gonzaga knocking off TCU, and then I have Gonzaga knocking off UCLA. I think Gonzaga is going to have, they still have Drew Timme. They shoot the ball well. I think they're going to beat a diminished UCLA team. But UCLA, if they win, I wouldn't be surprised either. I think VCU is going. Here's my long shot of the tournament. I think VCU is going to knock off UConn if Iona didn't already do it. So I think VCU is going to the Sweet 16. That's my double-digit team in the Sweet 16. Kansas will knock off Arkansas. I think Kansas will knock over VCU. And then I have Gonzaga, Kansas in the regional finals. And then I have Kansas advancing to play Houston. And then I have Houston into the final against Alabama. And I'm going to go I'm going to split the baby. I'm going to go Alabama to win one of my brackets, and I'm going to go Houston to win the other. Those two are the best teams, in my opinion. Can I see Kansas winning at all? Of course I do, but back-to-back is tough. Historically, it hasn't been a thing. So I'm going to go Alabama. I mean, they will be distractions for Alabama, but they're so talented. I think that Houston or Alabama will be the team to win it all. I can't see Texas winning it. I can't see Gonzaga winning it. I can't see Purdue winning it, definitely. Duke is not going to win it. So it's really just those three. And UCLA, if UCLA was fully healthy, I think they would have a shot. But it's really, to me, Houston, Alabama, Kansas. Those are the three teams. So there you have it, guys. I'm out of breath. I'm tired. I hope you enjoyed the video. Share it. Well, maybe not share it if you want to win your league, but I enjoyed this. Keep sharing me updates on how your brackets are doing, and I will probably come back tomorrow and try to take some questions on the tournament. So until then, guys, have a great night. Take care, and we'll talk soon.